Welcome to Shape the Podcast, a podcast all about maintaining mental health by sharing stories from those who have overcome negative experiences and feelings, then turned them into something positive. Meet your host.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Shape the Podcast. It's just me tonight, good old Kyle. Jason is actually taking the night off because he has other obligations. And when this airs, because this is a taped recording, I will be taking the night off because me and my wife are going to have a date night. She wants that tomahawk steak, so we're going to get tomahawk steak. But hope you've all had a great, enjoyable 2 weeks. I know it's been crazy busy for a lot of us, parents, kids, all that good stuff. Don't have to worry about that. Just have work. And then this weekend, me and my wife will be going down to Elizabethtown, Kentucky, for the Bluegrass Beard Alliance's beard mustache competition called Beard America. I will not be competing because I'll be helping her vend, because those of you know that she crochets, and she'll be vending at that event. So stop by the Stitchin' and Bitchin' crochet booth and pick up some awesome stuff that my wife has made, and you'll get a fresh high five and a hug from me. But yeah, so 2 weeks. Mark this on your calendar. Shape the Podcast turns 2. All right. We will not have a guest in 2 weeks, but it'll just be me coming on with Jason, and we'll be talking about, the past 2 years, his past, half of a year, and just talking about what the podcast means to both of us. And you never know what might happen. But yeah, in 2 weeks, Shape the Podcast turns 2, and I'm excited. But without further without further ado, I'm getting my tongue tied. Tonight's guest is a woman who I reached out to, via a Facebook group here in the town I live in called Let's Talk Lebanon. I put on there, hey, looking for guests for some upcoming episodes of the podcast. And if you're interested, reach out to me. And she is one of the ones that did. So none of you know her. I just met her tonight via video, but we did talk back and forth on the social medias. But I'm going to bring her on. Her name is Deona, and she's going to tell her story. It's pretty awesome, by the way, just like everybody else's story, because if you talk about mental health, it's a great thing. So let's bring her on and get to know her. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know. Thanks for, answering the call, so to speak. It's amazing because I got a lot of responses from that. Even people that didn't respond reached out and were like, hey, we're interested in coming on,
Yeah.
So as I told you before the podcast started, note to self, everybody, if you're looking for a specific guest, make sure that when you do post in the group, read their guidelines, because I got put on like probation. Like I now have to have my post read by them and given permission. So yeah, all because I was looking for some people to talk about mental health. But I'm glad you came on, and I'm glad you said yes. But for those who are watching, because they don't know you,
Yeah.
unless they're friends and families of yours, introduce yourself to the crowd.
Yeah. So my name is Deona, and I immediately pinged on your post because mental health is something that I have been engaged in, either because I was seeking my own mental health or trying to help other people find positive mental health, for a large portion of my life. So when I see those words, mental health, I always sort of dial in, and so it was really intriguing to me to see your podcast and to learn a little bit more about it. And I think that telling stories is one of the most powerful things we can do.
Yeah.
Especially telling our stories and having people listen, without shame, without judgment, just making space for you to show up and say what's true about your experience in life is such a powerful thing. And I know that sometimes it can be challenging for people. So, I kind of like to be an early adopter. So just say, hey, look, I get why it could be a little nerve wracking or a little scary, but I'm willing to put myself out there in the hopes that I can encourage other people to go out and share their journeys and find the mental wellness that they really seek.
Well, speaking of that, because you said you like to help people with that, let's talk about your specific journey, and then we'll get to what you're doing to help people with that mental health.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like if there are any like firstborn children out there, usually specifically female, I was the firstborn. I'm the oldest in my family on all levels, like child, grandchild, great grandchild. So
yeah, I'm the baby. So
whole different experience.
I'm the baby and I'm adopted. Okay. So I really got babied. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I got away with a whole lot, and my parents knew it, and they know it today. And even my mom was like, "Yeah, we let y'all get away with a whole lot."
Yeah. I understand. I mean, I imagine that my youngest brother is had a way different experience, and he had way different parents than what I had. My parents, had grown up and matured. I mean, they were barely 20 when I came along. They were closer to 30 when he came along. So they learned a whole lot about life in those 10 years that they didn't know when I was born. Fortunately, I was born into a family where I was well cared for and loved, but there also kind of became early on in my life this sort of dynamic of self-reliance and performance. So early on, I kind of started to kind of build this idea that if I can make the people around me happy, then it felt a whole lot better to me. It's really hard when people around me are frustrated, even if it's not particularly at me, if they're stressed, even if it's not particularly at me or because of me. I found that people pleasing was the easiest way to get what I really wanted, which was connection. If I gave people what they wanted, that was the easiest way to get connection, which is, as I've learned later in life, as I've done my own self-examination and learned more about myself, connection is my number one value.
Well, I think everybody wants some sort of connection.
Yeah.
People pleasing, it's nice for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, is it really needed? Because you find out that, like, especially for me, I was that people pleaser, but then again, I'm like, well, why am I trying to please you when I know that part of my language, you don't give a flying flip about me, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
so like, I think that, we as human beings, that's one thing that we do is because we want that connection in some form or fashion, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, it became so ingrained. So for me, eh, people pleasing was tied to shame. If I couldn't please people, if I couldn't give them what they wanted, if I couldn't make them happy, then that kind of felt like there was something wrong or shameful about me.
Mhm.
And so I kind of fell into that, which I think plays a large part in, my teenage years and my 20s, because when you carry shame for that long, it'll switch some things up in your mind, how you feel about yourself and how you address life. And kind of along with that, because my parents were so young when they had me, um, there seemed to be like an unspoken contract where everything was okay as long as I didn't need anything from them. If I could learn to do things myself, if I could
Mhm.
learn to take care of myself, if I could just go play quietly in my room and not need attention and not need someone to go and play with me, if I could get up in the morning without waking my parents up and make breakfast or take care of my younger siblings. There was like this unspoken contract to be self-sufficient and needless.
But yeah,
And
that's not like, well, when you're a kid, that's not what you need, you know?
right, right. And it's so hard because, as a kid, all the wires in your brain are getting connected without any part of the conscious brain being online, right? It's all
Yeah.
happening in the background. And it's not that I was super aware of these structures as a kid. I look back on my childhood and I actually have very fond memories of it. But what I've noticed is that those things were laying the groundwork. They were the foundation for
Mm.
the challenges that I had with mental wellness
Mhm.
later in life. And so for me, those kind of first started showing up in high school when I started just carrying a lot of anxiety. So, most of my life until high school, I had been, I had performed the way I was supposed to. I got good grades. I was polite. Didn't cause trouble. Um, and then, something flipped in high school. Look, high school's just hard. Like
Yeah.
it's in middle school, like I don't know. And I've worked with a lot of like thousands of middle schoolers over the years. I don't know that anybody really has a good time in middle school. Like and especially in this day and age with all of the social media and all of the online stuff, like middle school's just tough. Like
Yeah.
something just happens to you. And you kind of carry that into high school where all of a sudden you're expected to behave a little bit more like an adult. The pressure becomes higher. And all of a sudden there was like this realization that I really can't live up to all of these expectations. Like I'm trying to figure out who I am. I'm trying to take care of myself. I've got expectations of parents. I've got expectations of teachers, people at school, things I was
Mhm.
doing extracurricularly, and all of these things. And it just, what happened is like my body just went into panic mode. It just went into anxiety mode.
Yeah.
And I would, and I just started, I dreaded going to school. I would find any way out of school that I could. Once I had a car, I would skip school so
See,
often.
I dreaded going to school because, like I said, I was the youngest. And so my expectations were a little bit different because
Yeah.
I had older siblings, but yet I also had a trend. Like, if I didn't live up to that, or because I was
Mhm.
related to them in some form of fashion, um, so I got picked on a lot. So
Mm,
I dreaded going to school because I was getting picked on, and because
yeah.
of having those older siblings. You know, oh, you're a Waller, like that. I was already known. You know, so
Yeah. Yeah.
total end of the spectrum, but I can totally relate uh, to where you're coming from
Yeah.
with that whole anxiety part because you have to
Yeah.
you have to live up to something. People always want you to live up to something.
Right. That expectation, right? And our expectations might have been different from what was expected of you and what was expected of me, but the expectation of other people has played such a large role in my life to at various times, and wanting to meet people's expectations, because if I didn't, then it felt like deep failure. And if it felt like it was possible I wasn't going to meet expectations, then that anxiety would come in. And at the time I didn't have the skills, I didn't have the knowledge to just say, hey, I'm not okay. I need a break. I'm going to look at all of this stuff. Here's 20 things that are causing me anxiety, and only one of these things is really important. So I'm going to set the other 19 things down, and I'm just going to focus on this one. And I didn't have the voice or the understanding of how to do that. So I would skip school, and I would drive around, and I would, go to Target and buy new music and blast it in my car. And usually, at that time it was like Alanis Morissette, so like trying to get like all of my rage out. And
that's now was that back in the tape recorder days, or was that back in CD days?
Yeah, I think at that point we were 2 CDs. We were so it was like mid 90s, late 90s.
Because I was like 98 is when I graduated, but growing up it was tapes. And then it got into CDs. But yeah, that's when there were music stores that actually sold tapes and CDs. Now everything is digitally downloaded. Like there are no really music stores anymore. There's record shops because records are making it come. But I going in the store and buying a Creed or Tori Amos, something like that. But yeah,
absolutely. I totally get that. And you didn't know if you were going to like all the music or not until you got the CD and you put it in. You just had to listen to it start to finish. You couldn't, there wasn't any previews. You just had to know that you liked the artist and hope that the album was good. So that's what I would do. I would skip school when the anxiety would get too much. And for me, nature has always been like that's the place that recenters me and grounds me. It's been that way since I was a little kid. So I would go somewhere. I would go to a nature preserve, I would go to a creek. I would go to the woods. I'm so grateful that I at least knew that piece. I knew enough about myself to know that I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know how to fix it, but I know if I go to this place, something's going to shift and something's going to feel better.
That was your calmness.
Yeah. Yeah. And it still is to this day. I'm a nature girl. I mean, I lived in New York City for a little while, and the concrete jungle, it's tough. And I would wake up at 5:00 in the morning and walk a couple blocks into Central Park on Saturdays and grab my bagel and coffee from the cart on the corner and sit in Central Park all day, because it was the only green space in the city. It was the only, natural place in the city. So it's a big draw for me. So I did go through that, and I didn't, at the time it was kind of offered. That was probably around 16 is about the time that I talked to my first therapist or counselor a couple of times. And, unfortunately, I didn't find it super helpful. They were.
Is it because you didn't think that they had the right answers?
Part of it, I think part of it was they really pushed putting me on an antidepressant. And I've always been really reluctant about putting pills into my body. Now, I mean, because cigarettes were working really well for me at the time, right? Yeah. I felt pretty good. If I could just go smoke, even though I was 16, 17, and wasn't supposed to be, that was, that was a coping strategy that actually worked for me. And I think at the time, we're talking later 90s, I think there was still kind of a stigma around antidepressants and around, that level of mental health. But I also didn't feel depressed. I felt like they were trying to put this label of depression on me.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my experience. My experience was actually something like, I really just kind of needed support. I really just kind of needed someone to be with me and to know that all of this stuff wasn't resting on my shoulders. All of this stuff wasn't solely my responsibility. And I've gone back and forth through that cycle a bunch of times. And I so 17, I moved to New York City for a while, did that, came home, worked in the family business kind of through my 20s, and then decided to go to college, and I was away from home. And progressively my anxiety, when I started bringing in like college, so I was trying to work 2 jobs and go to school and be super successful at school. And school just was never, I'm smart. I love learning. I actually love education, but the system of school just never worked for me.
Yeah.
I love exploring ideas. I love reading. I love learning about things, but it was so I told you earlier, my number 1 value is connection. My number 2 value is freedom. And there's no freedom in our educational institutions. Like even at the college level where there was supposed to be, it just felt so stifling, and it just felt so disconnected.
Yeah.
And part of it was, at this point, I didn't go back to college till I was like 20, 21. I was in my early 20s when I started my college journey. And the truth is, I had no idea. I had no idea what I wanted to be. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And there's all these people around me treating these subjects and these things that I'm learning like they're the most important thing in the world. And you have to excel at these things. And I'm like,
yeah,
I just don't know if calculus is really supposed to be a part of my future.
Yeah. Am I going to use this now? And which, I look back and I'm like, I have a job now where I don't use any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the real thing. Like I went to college and, I got the piece of paper. I can tell people that I have a bachelor's degree. And every single thing that I've accomplished in my life, I've been self-taught. It was something I was interested in, and I assumed that I could. So I ended up finding a way of saying yes and trusting that I would figure it out, which is a gift. It's a gift. And I think it's served me well in life. So from 17 to about, 24, 25, my anxiety just kind of, there's a shorter and shorter time period between anxiety attacks and anxiety episodes. And once they come on, it becomes harder and harder for me to shake it. And then in 2008, so I was about 26 years old, that's when I had my first panic attack. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. I think some people, I want to make sure that I put this out there. Anxiety and panic are 2 different things. They're kind of along the same structure in our nervous system, but panic is kind of like anxiety on steroids. And what happened for me is that just one night I had gone to bed, I woke up and I was in full-blown panic. I couldn't breathe. There was a heaviness in my chest. And I genuinely thought I was dying, but I didn't I couldn't wrap my head around anything, like calling 911, calling for help, calling somebody. Like my brain wasn't working and my body felt like it was shutting down, and just this incredible fear, and my heart was racing, and I had no idea what was happening to me. And I finally got enough of a sense around me it was later at night, probably close to midnight, to drive over to my grandparents' house, who lived in the same town at the time, and just knocked on their door, and my grandpa opened it, and I'm like, I'm just scared. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm just scared, and I can't shake this feeling, and I don't know if I'm okay. And luckily they were, my grandparents, my mom's parents, are just the most soothing people in the world. So I went, and my grandma was already in bed with her CPAP machine. So she puts her CPAP machine on me. She's like, here, you just need oxygen. And you know what? She actually was right. Like it was probably one of the best things she could do, was actually start, kind of pushing that oxygen into my body. And I was able to calm down, and I was able to find some release. But they say panic attacks last about 15 minutes on average. This was a couple of hours. This was a couple of hours of just wondering if I'm going to die. And it was the first time I'd really thought about that. Like, I felt so fragile and so vulnerable and so alone. Because, I lived by myself from the time I was 17 years old. I was always alone. There wasn't anybody if something happened in the middle of the night and I was really in trouble, that realization that I was on my own really just hit me hard. And it kind of broke something in me. And so that whole summer, I would deal with panic attacks. And for me, they started with sleep panic, which is where you just wake up from a dead sleep and to panic mode, which is awful.
Even if you had
plain awful.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, I tried different things. And at the time I didn't have health insurance either. So going and talking to somebody, going and getting checked out, like, I couldn't afford to walk into the emergency room and pay a couple $100. I couldn't afford a prescription.
Nobody can, even with insurance.
Yeah. So I felt really alone in it and really scared by it. And, I spent most of 2008 in a panic, just trying to convince myself that I wasn't going to die. And that's a scary place to be. And so I had to kind of start using strategies. And one of the things that I found that was really helpful to me is I started creating these rituals, these things that I would do that would remind me. If there was another person around, I started noticing, like, if I could put my hand on their chest and feel them breathing and match my breathing to theirs, my panic attack would last way shorter. And but because I lived alone, that wasn't always an option for me.
Yeah.
You
can't do it to your dog. You can't be like, hey, come here.
It's crazy, but I actually had a dog at the time where she figured out when I got panicked in the middle of the night, she would come and she would lay her whole body on top of my chest. And she would stay there for about 15 or 20 minutes. It was uncanny. Like,
pretty much until she knew that you were calmed down enough.
She did. Like, and she just knew, hey, this is what we do. This is what we do. And honestly, I don't know that I would have survived that time without her. Like, she was such a gift. She was such a gift. But I also started to learn the benefit of rituals. And so when I would start to feel a panic attack coming on, I would go and I would put the kettle on the stove and start to boil hot water. And then I would make tea from the actual tea leaves, like not the bags.
Yeah.
And I would be really intentional and really slow about it. And then I would hold the mug and I would breathe in the steam really slowly in and out. And I would put, so I could feel the heat on my chest. I could feel the heat on my face. And I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know how effective what I was doing at the time was, but I would also just kind of rock myself gently. Which I've learned, later in life, as I've really started studying these things, I was sending calming signals to my brainstem, which is the survival part of our brain. And when we can rock, when we can sway, when we can engage our senses, our 5 senses, we actually start to send calming signals to our bodies. And I couldn't have put language around that at the time. I just knew I had found this ritual and it made me feel better. And so I started to find those things, and I started to focus a little bit more on myself and my own growth, and focusing on health for myself. And that helped. And I started to get a little bit more as I became more like physically healthy, like in my body, physically healthy. I started to engage more outside of just me sitting in my house by myself, which was really helpful. Taking my dogs for walks, going to dog parks, getting involved in church and outreach programs and things like that, and really started building a network of solid people in my life beyond the structures that I had. And that became really important. I'm a huge believer that our community, our tribe, our people, whatever you want to call it, they're one of the most important things that you can choose in life, who you choose to be in community with and have around you.
Well, all right. So you said something. You said who you choose. Okay. Because some of my choices and my friendships were bad at periods of times in my life.
Yeah.
But now the choices that I have in friends now, not only did I choose them, but they chose me. So we are like a community. One of my good friends who I'm gonna call after this podcast tonight, because I haven't heard from him this week. I consider him family, and we're not blood related, but it's all about having that good connection, not the bad connection,
Absolutely.
where that you have to people please to get them to be your friends, but it's good to have that connection to where these people, they really care about you, and they don't care about you because of this and that. They care about you because they care, So
I think that's one of the most it's just when you find those people where you can just show up and say, look, I'm a mess. I am falling apart today. I do not have my shit together. I do not have a clear view on the future. I don't even know if I care about the future, but here I am. Will you be with me? And they don't even hesitate to just say, yeah, sure. I mean, those are your people.
You also said something about the future. What I've learned is not to concentrate on the future. For me, it's concentrating on the now.
What's here.
I can't control what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
Or the next day. I can't control what happened in my past. I think that a lot of people kind of dwell upon that too much. Is the future. Stop thinking about the future. Start thinking about the now, and what in your life are can you control now? Because yes, there are things that happen in our lives that we can't control, but it's what can you control in the now, not what can you control in the future, because
Right.
the future's not here. No, nor is it guaranteed to be here. Especially with this. But yeah, so I just tend to think that a lot of people need to be more acceptable of the now.
Yeah.
And the moments that we have now, because tomorrow won't be tomorrow when you get there. Tomorrow will be now.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
It's just crazy how of course when we were younger, kids, teenagers, of course we concentrated on the future, because we're like, oh yeah, in the future this and that's different, but a lot of adults do that now, and and they forget, and I'm guilty of it just like everybody else is.
Sure.
But you gotta think, what can I do now that will help my future if my future gets there,
Yeah. So one of sort of the, I guess, principles that I've adopted for my life is grow where you're planted, which for me means wherever you're at right now, grow in some way, whatever that is. Maybe it's just making your bed today and getting up. That's great. Grow right here, right now. Where you're at right now, there is an opportunity for you.
Yeah.
And I work really hard to kind of stay in that mindset.
So, let's progress a little bit from the notes that you sent me. So in 2015, 10 years ago, you had something pretty much happen in your life. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. So just to give a little background leading up to it, in 2014, the direction I thought my life was going in kind of shifted. I ended up unemployed for like the last 6 months of 2014, which really, really was a struggle for a people pleaser, performer, perfectionist, and was starting to get my feet under me. At the beginning, I finally found employment at the end of 2014 in December, and the first half of 2015 was really trying to figure out, I didn't have a single job. I had to work a couple of jobs to kind of make ends meet. And I was on a trip out to Colorado, and I just got home. It was 4th of July. It was 4th of July weekend. It was actually July 5th. And I got a text from my younger brother, who had been down in Florida for rehab. So he had, gotten into some things. He'd been arrested. In lieu of jail time, they sent him to rehab. He went down to Florida in January of 2015, and we saw him in April, and he looked like he was doing well. But he was supposed to be in rehab for minimum 90 days. They said he's cured at 28 days and kicked him out to halfway house. And so we didn't really know the story of what was happening. And so I just got home from Colorado, and I got a text. Me and my sister got a text from my brother, basically saying, I just want to tell you both, I love you. And, I'm just going to end it. I'm going to end it all. And it was really scary for a couple of hours because we couldn't get a hold of him. Finally, my sister did. And she was in a place financially where she was like, tell me where you are. I will send you an Uber. And Uber was still like a new thing then, but thank God, like I will send this to you. I will get you to the airport. There will be a ticket waiting, like come home. And originally he was going to stay with her, but we found out that, he had not kept sober at the halfway house. And she had very young kids at the time. And she said, I can't have him here. And it was me, and being the older sister and the responsible one, I brought him to my house. And I really thought that I brought him to stay just for a couple of weeks while we figured out the right rehab situation for him to be in.
Yeah.
And then he opted not to go.
That's because he wasn't ready, and because it takes. Here's the thing. Yeah. I truly believe that yes, some people, if they are willing and ready, and if the courts send them, and they really want to do it, then they'll do it. Yeah. But you have to be willing and ready to make that change. Yes, do people stumble? Yeah, it's gonna happen. Because that's, especially in 90 days, man. Those first 90 days of any type of recovery are the hardest ones.
Yeah.
Really that first year.
Yeah.
I was in recovery. I'm able to day, and I talk about this often. I'm able to day and sit 20 feet away from a liquor cabinet full of bourbon, but I walk by it every single day. I don't have to pick it up. I don't have to drink it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, like you said, there has to be a willingness to make the changes, and he just wasn't ready. He just wasn't ready to make the changes.
As I've learned, and look, when I first started this journey back in 2015, I knew nothing about addiction. I knew nothing about the brain. I knew nothing about healing. I didn't really know the ins and outs of mental health. But one of the things that I found to be, the piece that and I do talk to people who are, run recovery places and things like that. But one of the things that they usually fail to address is the fact that, that they're not, most of the time, people aren't using an addictive substance to get high. That's not the goal. The goal is to feel better. The goal is to survive something. The goal is to stop a feeling that's really hard.
Yeah, they're using it to escape.
Yeah, it's a survival tool.
And then getting high is just part of it.
Yeah,
because you get that rush. You get that rush of getting high. It's just like drinking. You get that rush of drinking, because once you get to a certain point, all your problems get taken away, but really all your problems get intensified.
Yeah. And I think people, so often I've seen this structure where, what is familiar to us feels so much more safe than what is unfamiliar in our brains. And so I know, so when you think of the addict, someone who says, you know what, I know that this works. I know that when I do this, I don't have to feel this. I know that things feel better when I do this. And when we take away someone's coping strategies, if we're not genuinely there to help and support and guide and help them put things in place, then relapse is inevitable, I feel like. Because we're asking them to give up the thing that they use to cope, to survive, to stay alive. And that's a really hard ask if you're not willing to offer something in its place.
But we also, and I learned this back when I was in recovery, is that we also don't need to be enabled to continue those bad behaviors, because if we're enabled to continue what we were doing, we're never going to find what we need.
Yeah. And that was a really hard line for me to walk, especially in those first 2 years with my brother. Because I was convinced that isolating and shaming him wasn't going to solve the problem. And And so I tried to be as understanding as possible, and as compassionate as possible, which I still believe is a good thing. What I failed to do, and what really did harm to me, I think, and to our relationship, and ultimately to him, was that I failed to have boundaries, and I failed to I failed to ask for the support that I needed.
Yeah.
So during that time with my brother, if anybody asked me how I was doing, I just said, "Oh, I'm fine." Put on a happy face, put on the performance. I'm fine. I can handle this. I've got it. And it just wasn't true. I was in no way prepared to do life full time with an addict. And not just an addict who also had mental health issues. So massive depression, massive shame and self-hatred. And who's, what I've come to learn, is probably neurodivergent, who probably also has a brain that isn't wired typically, whatever typically means, but zero way prepared. And so I had to kind of learn as I go. But those first 2 years were really, really hard. And it culminated in, he had started seeing someone who introduced him to crystal meth. And he ended up he got a bad batch that kind of tripped him into psychosis. And, the police took him to the emergency room. The emergency room doctor just said, nothing we could do. Sent him home with me that night, where he had a break in reality. And it was just, it was really hard. And when my brother,
the emergency rooms, they're not coped with mental health. Yeah, they know how to get you out from an overdose, but anything past that, they're like, we've done all we can do,
Yeah.
Go.
And it was kind of the combination. So my brother also has, and this is kind of a lineage passed down to him from, his great grandfather to his grandfather to his dad to him, what's known as intermittent explosive anger disorder. So sort of naturally an angry person anyway. And then you add chemicals and all sorts of things on top of that. And he could get really scary. And I'll say, he never was physically violent with me, but there was definitely intimidation, manipulation, verbal abuse at times. And he would punch things. He would punch holes in walls and doors. And I lost a lot of safety deposits on apartments because of holes in the wall. And the wild thing is that I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't really think anything of it. I was just, because part of it was I was just trying to survive. I was just trying to survive. And I love my brother. Like, he's one of my favorite people in the world. He's my little brother. I'm 8 years older than him.
Well, you were trying to survive with your own, and then here you are, you have your own stuff with your mental health, and then you get tossed this on top of it. So you're not surviving for you, but you're trying to survive for both. And I can tell you that was probably very difficult, and weighed down on you as a person. So how are things today with him? Like, how was that?
So today, we've taken a couple of breaks from living with each other. I say we do life together, shortly after that crystal meth episode, he did go into rehab and got meth and all of that, and has stayed clean from that. And a couple of times he's just moved out and crashed on people's couches. And a couple of times, once he had his own place for a couple of months around COVID. But for the most part, we've lived together and do life together. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about how to have a healthy relationship with someone who's struggling.
Yeah.
But my experience with him has also pushed me into wanting to understand people better, and why we do the things that we do, and what are the structures in place, which led me to all sorts of things. But the things that I found to be most helpful is learning about our nervous systems, learning about the regulation of our brain, bottom up regulation of our brain, learning about how our relationships can either help or harm us. So, one of the things that I say a lot is that we're broken in the context of relationships, and we're healed in the context of relationships. And through all of that, I really have educated myself, which has, in some part, just to make my life easier, to understand things that were going on with me, to understand things that were going on with him, and just kind of this dogged persistence. Like, I'm gonna figure this out. Like, I am so stubborn. I am so stubborn. And I will not give up on myself, and I will not give up on him. And now I won't give up on the people that I work with. So it took me into this learning thing where I started to, for my own healing, I went and started doing work with horses. I had a session with someone who partnered with a horse, and horses have been something that I've loved my whole life. And in one session, I had more clarity and more awareness, I think, than I'd had from all of my years that I'd gone to therapy. And so I decided, you know what, I really want to pursue this. I want to be able to offer this to people because it's really powerful. Mm-hmm. And so in 2017, that's when I joined a program to learn how to do that. How do I partner with horses to create safe space for people to work through hard things in a way that's supported, but in a way where I'm not giving them the answers, because I can't give anybody the answers for themselves. What I can do is hold space for them to work through what they need to work through, and maybe reflect something back to them so that they can see it in a new way, or see how it's operating in their life. And the horse is such a great partner in that. And then, along with that, I started learning about trauma and really what it means to be trauma informed, and the nature of trauma and how it shows up in our bodies, and why it's so important to understand when you're working with people, which led me to neuroscience and the nervous system and all of that stuff. So and then with that, kind of as I was learning that stuff and I was starting to work and supporting people, I was approached by a nonprofit organization that I had previously worked for. And this was on the heels of COVID. So late 2020. And they said, we're having a really hard time finding someone to run our batterers intervention program, which is a program for men who have been convicted of domestic violence. For the most part, it's not always that, but it usually is.
Yeah.
And I knew I had something to offer, but there was something that just felt kind of weird. Like why me? Like, should a woman be leading this class? Should a female be leading this class?
I was gonna say that had to be a little weird, doing that because you're convicted. These guys were
Yeah.
were were convicted of battering.
Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
and but so that had to take a lot of courage as a
Yeah.
woman, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
To,
And so and I have to say, you know, had I not had the experiences that I had with my brother, I don't know that I could have succeeded in that role. Um, and I kind of went in kind of determined to see these men the same way that I saw my brother, as people who had stories, who had trauma. Doesn't excuse behavior. Like, I like to be very clear when I talk about these guys. Like, the things that they do are not okay.
yeah.
And there is no part of me that consents to what they did or approves or affirms what they did.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side of that is everybody has a story. And when I started to learn the stories of these men, very often there was trauma and abuse in their childhood. Very often they were raised in very violent families. Very often they had at least one parent who had spent time in prison, or and again, not excuses, but there are certain structures that come into place.
Yeah.
And the curriculum that I sort of entered into to start working with these guys, it wasn't trauma informed, which was a huge red flag for me. And so I thought maybe there's a better way. So I ended up changing the name from Batterers Intervention to Safe Relationships. Because what I found is that most of them had no idea how to be in relationship with anyone, including themselves.
Yeah.
They couldn't be in relationships with themselves. They didn't know what was happening for them. Like, most people came in and they're like, I don't know what happened. Like, this, and this was happening. And then it was just like, I snapped. And I'm like, well, you don't know it, but your body was actually giving you a ton of signals leading up to that snap that you just weren't aware of. And so, we're pretty clear in class, most, I think most people think that they're coming into a punishment. I like to tell them right up front, like, I really think this is an opportunity. This isn't meant to be punitive. This is meant to be restorative. This is meant to offer you a level of understanding and to give you some tools that you don't have. And what I found through the course is that most people, by the time they get to the back half, because they're in it for 26 weeks, like that's not a short period of time. That's 6 months. By the time they get to the back half, so often I hear them saying, like, I wish someone taught us about relationships when we were younger. Like, why doesn't anybody teach you how to be in relationships? Why doesn't anybody teach you about your nervous system? Why doesn't anybody teach you these tools of down regulating, of finding regulation? And it's true. We don't teach those structures hardly anywhere. And so much of how our brain gets wired happens in the first 8 years of life before we're ever able to really say, okay, this is right, this is wrong, this is what I want to be like, this is not. Our brain's just getting wired. And if it's wired in chaos, guess what? You're going to have a chaotic brain. You're going to have a chaotic nervous system.
Well, and it's you getting back to like teaching about relationships. They kind of did that when we were in like middle school and high school with that sex ed. But they never really taught you how to be in a relationship. It was about, oh, this is how you care for a baby. Or this is how you don't have sex. You're right. Like
it's like that's the only thing relationships are good for. Either have sex or procreate. Like that's it. That's all relationships are for.
Like I look back on that and I'm like, there's no way in hell. Like I was taught how to have a relationship.
No.
I learned how to have a relationship through watching my other older siblings and watching my parents. Because
Yeah.
they had healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Did I have some unhealthy relationships? Yeah, I sure as hell did.
Yeah.
But I think that it's all about teaching. Like
Yeah.
you said, that most of these guys and most of the men that deal with that more than likely didn't have that upbringing to where they could learn how to have a healthy relationship.
Right.
That their healthy relationship was,
Yeah.
oh, you're going to yell at me, so I'm going to yell at you, and then I'm going to get angry enough to cause harm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so they're not only causing harm to that person, but they're causing harm to themselves.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I think that there does need, especially in today's society, with social media and with television, the need for to teach a healthy relationship isn't there.
Right.
What you see on social media and what you see on television, especially with these kids growing up, it's so toxic.
So dysfunctional.
Yeah,
It's so dysfunctional.
and people wonder why the suicide rate with teenagers is so high, but yet also the suicide rate with guys in general, with men in general, is astronomically high.
It is.
So
It is.
I think that's what's broken. I think about the whole mental health system is that it all starts with relationships.
Yeah.
And if we can teach one another how to have a proper relationship
Mhm.
with not only ourselves but with
Yeah.
other people, and I'm not talking about like men and women. I'm talking about friends,
Yeah.
things of that
Yeah.
nature.
Relationships
But
are relationships.
it's broken and it needs to be fixed. And I think if yes, there is a chemical balance in some men that
Mhm.
unfortunately you cannot fix that part of that
Right.
that chemical balance. But
Yeah.
if they have the keys and the knowledge
Mhm.
that they needed to form those safe
Yeah.
relationships, then I think it would be a whole lot different, But
Absolutely.
there's just some things you cannot control,
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's
Yeah.
amazing that you're doing that, helping that, because
Yeah.
and it takes a strong woman, I know if I were a woman,
Yeah.
I don't think I can do it, But you have to,
Yeah.
and I get it, you have to put away in the back of your mind what they did. You
Yeah.
you have to look at them as you're Sam, you're a human being,
Hmm.
you know,
Absolutely.
and that's what you have, and that's what we all should do.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
we have to look at them as a person,
Yeah.
And
I think
instead of not a convicted felon or not,
right.
this or that. Yes,
Correct. Yeah.
the crime's a crime and a punishment's a punishment.
Yep.
But if we stopped looking at somebody based on what they did and started looking at them as a human being,
Yeah.
I believe that things would change.
Absolutely. And I think, I'm deeply invested in having more safe men in the world so that more women are safe. I have young nieces. They're out there and, one of them's at that dating age, and I'm invested in having safe men in the world because I
Yeah.
want them to be with safe men. I have a nephew. I'm invested in wanting him to be a safe man. And I am invested in having women be in relationships that are safe. And you can't do that in a male female relationship if the men aren't safe, or even in a male male relationship sometimes.
Yeah. So you're doing that, but then also, if I read through here,
Mhm.
you also have your own business.
I do. Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So in 2019, I graduated from a certification program. It took 2 years. And it was equine method Gestalt coaching. And Gestalt is just, it's a philosophical term. It's also a term for a certain type of psychology. But basically what it is we're going to look at what's showing up right here, right now, and then look in the background and see, what from the past is showing up in the present, and help you decide what you want to be true in the future. And doing that work with horses. And then is shortly after I graduated from that program, I learned, I really needed to be trauma informed. So I started another program that's the science and art of connected relationships. And out of that, I did start a business. It's known as, it actually just went through a branding change. So originally it was Rooted in Light, and that's still the overarching name of my business. But what I do business as now is called The Connecting Way. Because I genuinely believe that the path of connection really is the thing that will bring peace and healing into the world. And so I work with people in a lot of different ways. So it could be online. It might be a short engagement. Maybe you just need someone to hold space while you talk through a choice that you're trying to make. That's fine. I can do that. Maybe you're in a transition phase where, the things of the past aren't working anymore. But the things of the present, aren't clear to you yet. So I take time, and my goal is never to give anyone the answer. My goal, I don't have a magic wand. I can't give you a pill that's going to fix everything. I can't promise that the work that we do together is going to be quick. But what I can promise is that I will be with you. And when I'm with you, I'm going to make sure that we're in a really safe space. I'm going to make sure that I'm attuned to you. And I'm going to make sure that you can show up as authentically as possible and say what's true for you. And in that space, I genuinely believe that you will discover what you need. And I can't tell you what you need, but I can create a situation where you can become aware of what you need. Because I genuinely believe people know. Like, I genuinely believe people have the answer inside of them. But usually they don't have the tools, or they don't have the space to access it. So I help them access that inner knowing. And sometimes I do that work with horses. So especially around the topic of relationships and healthy relationships, what's wonderful about the horses is that it's a real relationship. They're a sentient being. And they can choose to be in relationship with us, or they can choose not to be in relationship with us. And it gives us a really wonderful practice space without judgment, where we can get real-time feedback of how we're showing up. Are we showing up? When we make this request of the horse, what do we notice the horse doing? Do they get stiff in their body? Do they relax and move towards you? And it's this dance of trying to figure out, okay, this is how I'm showing up, and this is the effect that it has in this other being. And when this other being has this is the effect that it has in me, and becoming aware of our own structures. And, one of the images that I give to the guys in my class is that my goal is to help you have deep enough roots that you can be a palm tree in a hurricane. You cannot control the external. You cannot control the things that are happening around you. And look, if you could, I would have figured it out by now, because God knows I have tried to control every single thing in my life in order to stay safe. And it's just not possible. But if you have those deep roots, you have something to tap into. So when that hurricane comes, when the storm comes, when there is chaos around you, when someone comes in with bad energy, when you're scared, when you have panic, you have roots deep enough and a support network strong enough to, you might bend a little, but you're not going to get uprooted.
Yeah.
And so really that's my work now, is to create that safe space, help people build those deep roots, because I believe it's a ripple effect. Once we learn it for ourselves, the opportunity we have to go out and offer that to others, it just multiplies, and it'll be exponential. And my hope is that we all end up just healing each other.
And is that a nonprofit organization by chance?
So it's not right now.
Right.
I have considered it. So one of my visions, right? I have a vision board of things that I want. So one of my visions is at some point to have a property that's, we have all of these community activity centers and community recreation centers, but to have a nonprofit that would be a community retreat center, where it would be healing for the people, the animals, and the land.
So right now you're just operating off of somebody else's.
Yeah. So right now I'm just operating as my own LLC. And the work that I do with horses, I partnered with this wonderful organization called Mustang Journey. They rescue Mustangs, and they have Mustangs that heal veterans and veterans that heal Mustangs. It's a wonderful organization. And so I use their facilities when I do the work with the horses. So I don't have my own property right now, but that's the vision, is to have a community retreat center where people can come and receive low or no cost services and really, really experience healing in nature and through what I think most people would consider alternative modalities.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. If anybody is interested in being a part of that, what you're doing, how can they get a hold of you to say, hey, maybe this will either benefit me or benefit somebody I know?
Yeah. So you can go to my website. It's theconnectingway.com. I will say it is under construction, but all of the information you need to get in contact with me, phone number, contact page, as well as a list of services as well. So, it's, I
was going to say, do you also have that
it's busy.
And a Facebook page as well?
Yep. So you can find The Connecting Way on Facebook and Instagram as well. And hopefully YouTube shortly, but I'm not there yet.
Hey, you know what? It took me a while to be like, what? I'm gonna branch out to YouTube and put it on YouTube, because it seems now with especially podcasts, if you're not on Apple, you're not on Spotify, you're not on YouTube, Facebook can be a little bit finicky when it comes to podcasts.
Yeah.
But yeah, well that's amazing that you're doing that. Number one, I'm sure that helps you in your mental health journey, because
absolutely,
our journeys with mental health never end.
No,
there's only one way it ends, and that's if we end it. So thank you for being vulnerable and coming on and sharing with not only me but the people that will watch this that who hopefully learned something new. And hopefully something that you've said has touched their lives. But before we wrap up, I do like to ask each of my guests, and I try to ask this every podcast. And you've said a lot of great stuff, but if there's one thing right now that you could tell somebody who's struggling with anything, anything negative in their lives, if there's one thing that you could tell somebody right now who's struggling to make it better, what would that be?
Wow. Wow. I feel the weight of that question. I really do. That's a big question. I think
It's one I try to ask it every single podcast.
yeah. So I think one thing that I would suggest is find the person who really sees you and take the risk of being authentic and vulnerable and ask for what you need. Find that face. You know, there's a neuroscientist that I've learned from that says, you know, every baby is born into the world looking for the face that's looking for their face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need that as adults. If you can find that face that can really see your face, really see you, and you can, it feels risky. It does feel risky to be authentic and vulnerable. But if you can show up and find that face that's looking for yours and say, here's where I'm at, here's what I need. It's an empowering moment. But it also will give you a level of connection and support that can really be life-changing.
That's great. That's amazing advice. I mean, for real, it is. On top of everything else that you've talked about. Well, I appreciate you again for answering the call to come on this podcast. You know,
thank you so much.
This podcast it's been a journey, but it's not my story. It's everybody's stories. You know, because everybody has a story. But I'm gonna kick you to the backstage area.
Perfect.
And I'm gonna wrap up, and I'll be with you afterwards. All right.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. For everybody, that is it. That's another episode of Shape the Podcast. Again, when this airs is coming Friday. This is a taped version, but I will try to hop on and say hi to all my viewers, and you know, just have a wonderful rest of your week. You know, and enjoy your weekend coming up. If you're in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, I will see you there at the VFW there in Elizabethtown. Other than that, if you're struggling and you need to talk, reach out, talk to somebody. You know, because it's better to have you here than to have you 6 feet under. Again, in 2 weeks will be the 2-year anniversary of this podcast. I get emotional thinking about it because I would never thought 2 years ago that I would have grown as a person all because of this podcast. So join us in 2 weeks. Jason will be back. He'll be on the other side of the screen. And we're just going to have a great hangout. We're going to have a great time. You never know. If somebody wants to join us live, and they can join us live. But we have no guests lined up. It's just going to be a night of talking about the past 2 years. Well, for me. And then talking about the past, 6 months for Jason. But I appreciate you all. Have a great night. And we'll talk to you soon.